John Penrose.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And can I start by saying that this bill was and still is a good bill. It does an enormous amount of very important things. I'm glad to see that it has broad acceptance and agreements with some minor points of disagreement on both sides of the House. It contains many of the measures which I personally called for in my government-commissioned review of competition policy called Power to the People a little while ago, and it has definitely updated and made some much-needed changes to our competition and consumer laws. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, however, I share some of the concerns which have already been raised today about just 4 of the amendments which have come back from their Lordship's House, which the government is seeking to oppose. And what worries me is not about the amendments themselves, because they, as we just heard from the opposition front bench, mainly seek to restore clauses which were the effective clauses which were in the bill when it came to this House originally. What worries me is that the wrong people are clapping, that the changes which the government has made, and which I think it is in many cases seeking to resist in this case with these Lords amendments, seem to many people to be on the side of the big tech firms rather than on the side of consumers and of competition, sharper competition and more consumer choice and help it standing up for the man and the woman in the street. And so therefore I'm hoping, earnestly hoping, that the Minister will be able to channel his historic zeal for these things and reassure us all on several important points, if he can, in his closing remarks, in order to reassure me and I'm sure others as well, that that is not the government's intention and that they remain committed. The fire still burns brightly in his eyes in order to make this happen. I should start by saying that the government's already done some of this on, I think it is Government Amendment 38A, the Lansley Amendment, which I think they've replaced with a version of their own, which is dealing with the Secretary of State's amount of time that he or she can take in dealing with guidance put forward by the CMA to make sure it isn't unduly delayed. That, I think, is extremely welcome, and I would enthusiastically support that, and it is a very good and welcome measure. However, we've already heard about 2 other things in particular. One is the role of judicial review when it comes to dealing with penalties, and I share some concerns that in moving away from a JR standard, judicial review standard, on penalties to a full merits review, that we may get bleed across. That clever lawyers working for big tech firms may be able to effectively broaden the scope of that through clever use of legal techniques in order to make sure that they can broaden out and prolong their attempts to walk backwards slowly and prevent justice being done. I'm devoutly hoping, therefore, that my good friend the Minister is going to be able to stand up and clarify that he expects to be able to, either from the dispatch box now, or in guidance perhaps, or other kinds of clarification which he intends to issue in due course, that he will be able to show to us that it will not be possible for bleed across to happen, and that he will take any necessary steps that may be needed in order to prevent that. In fact, I think he may be about to intervene upon me now.
To make that commitment to him. We believe that the bill draws a clear distinction between infringement decisions and penalty decisions. After taking legal advice on this particular matter, look at previous competition case law considering similar issues. The government considers neither the Competition Appeals Tribunal nor the higher courts will have any trouble in making this distinction for digital markets appeals. We've clarified this in the explanatory notes, and I hope this provides that there is little risk of bleed back of the merits appeal standard from penalty appeals to appeals about other types of decisions.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank him for that intervention, and thus emboldened by my success so far in getting him to front up, and I thank him very much for that. Can I move on to the second point, which again has a similar kind of set of concerns around it, which is the countervailing benefits issue. Now, we've heard already from the opposition front bench about the issue here, so I won't go through and repeat it all again, but it would be enormously helpful if either now in a further intervention or in his closing remarks the Minister could be clear that the new wording, which we've already had a discussion of, in his initial speech, that the new wording is not intended, and that he intends to make sure, again through either clarifications now or in guidance, it is not intended to be in any way a lower standard. It is either the same or tougher than what we had before when this bill first came to the House. Now, I'm pausing just briefly to see if he wants to intervene. He does. Marvellous.
This way, if you'd like us to do that. We believe the revised wording did not change the effect of the clause. SMS firms would still have to prove that there is no other reasonable, practicable way to achieve the same benefits for consumers with less anti-competitive effect.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we seem to be making marvellous progress and actually ending up with changes being confirmed on the floor of the House in a way which I don't think I've ever seen before. So let's keep going. I'm now going to be. I'm sure this will be an equally constructive intervention, of course.
If the Minister were to say that he would change the explanatory memorandums as well.
Well, I'm sure he will grab that opportunity in his closing remarks if he so wishes. But at least he has taken the opportunity to stand up already and give us public reassurances on the record about the level of the standard which is intended, and it is no lower, I think is very, very clear. So that's an important change. Oh, and again,
we're having this debate vicariously now, but just to note that the change in wording has not changed in the explanatory notes. I've seen the two different phrases.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think I'm on a roll here. Final point of the four issues in question is this point about proportionality. Again, we've had the debate already, so I don't propose to repeat the concerns. Again, it would be helpful either now or in his closing remarks if the Minister can clarify that the new and amended standard which is being applied is no lower. I think he said something to that effect to my friend earlier on, the former Attorney General, but it would be helpful just to nail that one down and to drive the nail home at some point as well, if he can. It's important, I think, for everybody to understand whether or not that new standard is any lower at all. It should be the same or higher. He's nodding, and I don't know whether or not I can tempt him to intervene again or whether or not he's going to wait. We will have to preserve our souls in patience, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for his closing remarks. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm going to therefore declare victory very shortly. I think that's been a very helpful set of interventions, and I thank the Minister for that. The final point I would make is something which is not in these amendments, but is nonetheless a commitment which he made at the dispatch box during report stage in response to an amendment which I and a great number of other parliamentary colleagues had tabled about better regulation, in which he made a commitment from the dispatch box that there would be a set of conclusions which would match a set of standards which he and I had agreed the wording on in advance, and that those would be in place before this bill receives royal assent. Clearly, we are getting quite close to that date. I hope very close to that date. I understand that there may be a government white paper in the offing, but I'm not sure whether or not the government white paper is either going to arrive before royal assent, and this is not in any way intended to delay royal assent. It is intended to bring forward the white paper or whatever document the government may be thinking of. And I am also, based on conversations which I've had so far, very concerned that the commitments which were in the Minister's statement, which were made from the dispatch box in this place, may not all be in that white paper. And I therefore urge him now to make sure, between now and royal assent, that he is working assiduously with his fellow ministers to make sure that they have got the memo which should have come round after he made his comments from the dispatch box.